Hello and welcome to Miscellaneous Musings, my informal, mostly unedited pseudo-podcast where I ramble about narrative mediums for as long as I like, sometimes with guests and always released early for my Patreon supporters. A few days ago, I was on the Replay Value Discord server talking with a few people about Kekkai Sensen, and specifically whether Kekkai Sensen 3, Season 3, would ever come out. And one of the points brought up was that there's not enough unadapted manga material, that there's just not enough left to adapt, so until that comes into play, we won't have a Season 3. And so what I said in response to that was that I don't really care about having a one-to-one adaptation. I don't mind seeing changes and new storylines and new characters as long as it's all good, as long as it's all consistent with the world and the characters and like the overall vision of the piece. And Bones clearly has people who can do that. Season 1 had anime original characters, it had anime original plot lines, and it was all really good. I would argue that some of the anime original stuff, White and Black specifically, are maybe some of the best characters in the entire universe. So clearly, we don't need one-to-one adaptations in terms of plot lines. Let's be clear, if there is good stuff to adapt, let's adapt it as close as possible, given that we are changing narrative medium, so the story being told inherently will not be the same by the unabstraction, the more specificity that is provided by the move from a written form in terms of like a light novel or a book or a comic form like a manga, and we're adding, all of these other elements that make the story more specific. And that's one of the challenges in adaptation, is that by adding these channels, you inherently are making a more specific story, even if the plot line is exactly the same. That is probably an analysis video in and of itself. I have a lot of thoughts about like the specifics of adaptation. I just gave you the real short point so that I can kind of just move along. But basically the gist is that there's this weird obsession with keeping things as one-to-one as possible, even when it's not beneficial. So I look to something like Hollywood, and The Godfather is like this great example of the original book. Kate at the end is like, oh yeah, Michael, I'm cool with you being a crime boss. Like, that's no big deal. And in the movie, she's like heartbroken, and Michael's this like ruthless guy, and it lays the seeds of like, wow, Michael is totally changed from the beginning of the story. Whereas in the novel, it's like, oh, maybe Michael's still a good guy. Like, who knows? And that is inherently a weaker story. But in anime, original changes like that, adaptations like that, are frowned upon generally. And I think for the most part, it's because it has a historically bad rap. I think of all of the filler, people complaining about filler in shows like Naruto. And that leads to people saying, okay, anything that's not in the original work is bad, we should just skip it, which is a shame. Because sometimes it's okay, and sometimes it's good. There are people who think that Full Metal Alchemist 2003 is better than Brotherhood. I've only ever seen Brotherhood. I wish I had seen 2003 and preferred it, because that would make my argument super duper easy. But in this case, I haven't seen it, and I don't want to claim that I have, just for the sake of an argument. But there are people who prefer 2003, and I think that speaks to the fact that sometimes there is an opportunity for adaptation to get at the core of a work in, if not the same way, in a different way, and still tell a really engaging and interesting story. And personally, the best argument that I can make that I have, seen and loved is Kekkai Sensen with Black and White. Someone at Bones, I'm guessing Rie Matsumoto, since her thing seems to be family based off of Kyoso Giga, looked at Kekkai Sensen and said, oh, there is an obviously missing parallel between Michelle and Leo. Let's add two characters who can, by the nature of being foils, let us explore that relationship more between a brother and a sister, and a brother who is specifically looking out for a sister. Although we can invert the who made the sacrifice point just for the sake of, messing things up a little bit, and we can see that, oh, Michelle and White are really similar, and Leo and White neither of them had to make the sacrifice, and they both bond over the fact that they're weak for that, and there's a lot of really great stuff there, but Black and White are anime original characters, and they are really truly the emotional heart of the first season, along with Leo. And the way that White lets us look at Leo's character, how it allows us to learn about the Michelle-Leo relationship, how the Tortoise Knight persona, really we don't see it with Michelle until season 2, but we can see that he, is constantly moving forward. We can see we can see the themes of like familial sibling love through White and Black, and how, because we never see Michelle in the show interacting with Leo in season 1, they're kind of our focus point for this, and we can take what we learn between those two and apply it to the Leo-Michelle relationship. And I think that's really critical to appreciating and loving Kekai Sensen. Without White and Black, I think that we'd have an inherently different show, and I can't say that we'd be better off without them. And I really look to White and Black and how their story is just how we're able to learn about photographs. I made a video about that. You should watch it. How photographs mean so much about life and death, and what that says about Leo's photograph taking. How Leo's relationship with White, how Leo's relationship with Black. I've either made videos about these things, or I'm going to make them in the future, so I don't want to jump too heavily into this. And more, I just want to highlight the fact that these are plot elements that were added to the story to enhance themes and to improve on characters who were already there. And I don't think anyone has, I can't say anyone has ever, but I personally cannot imagine Kekai Sensen without White and Black in them. I can, because I've read the manga, and frankly, the manga, the anime had this great climactic moment because of those characters, and realistically, that's why they were added, but it was done really well, and it was done seamlessly, and that's the kind of stuff that we should be looking for. I just really love Kekai. I just love Rie Matsumoto. Her focus on family between Kekai and Kyosuke. I'm really just basing it off of those two, because Baby I Love You Daze isn't really about the family dynamic, unless you make the claim that they'll fall in love and they'll have kids, and it's that's in the title. Yada yada. Oh, I watched JoJo, by the way. Can you tell? I'm probably public enemy number 47 because I have some thoughts on JoJo. Maybe I'll get to that eventually. I don't really want to axe myself right now, but so to rehabilitate my standing in the anime community, SAO is terrible. And I want to talk about SAO a little bit, because I think SAO is actually one of the best examples for what I wish would have happened. And I want to preface this, I guess, by saying that I realize that this is a dream, right? That I'm really yelling into the wind, but I'm trying to make a point here about why I think in a perfect world, someone will be like, oh yeah, we should adapt the plot. Like, we should take what's great about the story and change the plot to empower that story. And SAO is one of the best examples of that, because clearly there were things about SAO that were appealing. There are tons of people who watch SAO and couldn't put it down because it had some good premise stuff. And I do believe that. I think that SAO is a great example of a complete waste of a solid premise. I won't call it great or amazing, but it was a solid premise. And I wish that a producer at A1 Pictures had sat down and said, okay, listen, we're adapting this story called SAO. It has some good elements. There's definitely some stuff that we can build on here. Let's change up the plot so that it's better, so that we can hit some of these themes harder, because it's trying to be this point about, virtual reality and the real world are indistinguishable in terms of their effect on people. But it doesn't really make that point. So let's, hammer some things home so that we're making that point, and, this blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. Let's extend the length of Ironclad to the entire first season. Really, let's explore some new floors. Let's introduce some new characters, blah, 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 blah. And I realize that is never going to happen, because it is a dangerous move, financially speaking, because you could technically, I guess, alienate some of the fans of the original work who will be coming over. But I mean, ideally, I guess, and this is me speaking idealistically, is that we're adapting things because we're trying to reach a broader audience, right? We shouldn't be worried about losing the core audience. We shouldn't be worried about alienating the core audience because realistically, they were going to follow over anyway. And in this medium, which is mainly an advertisement for the original work, we should be trying to expand as much as possible. And I realize that that's actually a double-edged sword and probably why we don't see a liberal adaptation when it comes to storylines, because if it's an advertisement for the original work and you're changing plot points, someone who is watching the show and then goes to read the original material, assuming that they pick up where things left off, won't be able to just seamlessly transition. And this is why I say that I'm viewing this very idealistically, right? That I have this view of adaptation as I guess more liberal, that I want things to be changed more frequently, because I've watched movies that were improved by adapting the source material in terms of their plot points, in terms of their characters, that truly made a positive impact where the movie is better than the original work. And Godfather is kind of my like ipso facto example, where these small changes really improve the work. And I think that anime, for all of its good points and what it can achieve as a medium, is basically the opposite, in that it really does not take these adaptation risks in regard to how the storyline and the characters are told. And I think that's a huge bummer. But listen, it's a business, so they're going to make safe decisions, and sticking to the original work that is a known quantity and a known, seller is going to be the safe business decision. I just wish it wasn't like that, because I'm not preoccupied about the finances of the anime industry. That's not what I'm interested in about it. I'm interested in the storytelling and the types of stories we're telling and how we tell them. I'm not making this Miscellaneous Musings in hopes of reaching an anime studio or a producer or a publishing house in hopes that they will give their directorial staff or their writing staff more freedom. Because as much as I am a romantic and an idealist, I'm not that much of an optimist that I start buying into the impossible. I think the reason why I'm making this, besides for my own self-benefit, because I love that one line from Hyoka, is that if you are someone who believes that adaptation should be firmly one-to-one between plot and characters, because, we've already talked about how inherently story is different because of the mechanisms of telling the story, the medium itself. If you are someone who believes that one-to-one plot and characters is how we should always be going about things, I hope that this maybe changed your mind a little bit, and that you realize that, maybe there are ways that we can adapt a story, specifically in its plot and characters, because of the new medium, that can make the story, if not better, good in a different way. Maybe this original work is too long to be adapted entirely in one movie, for example, and thus we need to, cut out a few of the themes, but with that extra time, we can really, center in on this one theme and make it a really great story, even if it isn't identical to the original. Basically, that adaptation isn't a negative thing, that changing plot and characters for the sake of an adaptation is not an inherently negative thing, and that we should be looking at how we can best adapt things, and how, if an adaptation wasn't good, how could we have made it better, or if in an attempt to stick to that one-to-one, what did we leave behind? What could we have done to improve upon this? I think that's the point. I'm not going to answer a question in my Q&A corner this time around, because I've been basically answering every question that I've gotten in the Discord server since we launched. So I don't really have one, but feel free to leave one in the comments down below, or on Patreon, or however you listen to this. I hope, and let me know if my argument made any sense. Hopefully it did. I feel like this always happens when I make a Muse, because it's me rambling about narrative. I feel like it's a little bit too unstructured, and I usually get nervous about that. I've been trying to get over it. There's a reason why Muse went on a bit of a hiatus, but I'm glad to be bringing it back. I hope my argument was clear. If not, worst case scenario, I will make an actual analysis video, along with all the other adaptation videos I have planned for the near future. But yeah, let me know what you thought. And that will wrap this edition of Miss Muse. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, hope you enjoyed.